of hinted at this particular subject in a recent segment that we did here on Off the Break, and I kind of wanted to dive more in depth with it because I think it's a very important note for the average fan or somebody who just enjoys Call of Duty esports in general to understand the franchise benefits coming into year 2 of the CDL, because I think that year 2 is so huge for the franchises alike, because again, I've already talked on this, but we'll kind of talk on it a little bit more in depth. I know a lot of people look at social media for player interaction and they're talking about year 2, and historically in Call of Duty has been strictly about the player, and it's not really been about the brands. Obviously, you hear, Optic, Envy, FaZe, kind of at the end of the franchise, or rather before the franchise era took place, teams like United started to come around, things like that. And it's never really been kind of about the brands and players alike. And so I think it's interesting to talk about the franchises, because that is going to be the one consistent for the future. Because I feel like, again, Call of Duty in its old history used to strictly be about the players. And it's still, for me, a franchise or a player-driven franchise. It is a player-driven league for the most part. But it is important to hone in on the franchises more than ever, especially when it comes into situations like this. And it's not a common conversation to sit here and talk about a franchise without really mentioning a player specifically. But it's a conversation that I think needs to be developed more as time goes on, because there's going to be a number of different things that we start to dive into. There's going to be history with these franchises, things like that. The way that you look at, the NFL with things like the Patriots and the Packers and things like that, the NBA, Boston Celtics, the Los Angeles Lakers, a number of different teams that you kind of associate. The same thing is going to start to develop with the CDL as well. And so I want to talk on the year 2 benefits for these CDL franchises, because again, it is huge for them. From a player's perspective, it is kind of chaotic, right? If you're talking on from year 1 to year 2, as a player, you have a number of different questions going on in your mind right now. A lot of guys signed 1-year deals. A lot of guys signed 1+1 deals, and they're kind of in a frenzy of like, hey, am I going to play next year? Am I going to be on my same franchise? Am I going to get traded away? Things of that nature. And that's kind of what we see on social media. From a player's perspective, it can be a little bit crazy. And the primary reason for all of this is the change from 5v5 to 4v4. From a player's perspective, it is stressful. However, from a franchise's perspective, most of them, especially kind of more of the lower tiered ones, maybe ones that didn't see as much success or maybe don't have the same brands as other franchises do, this offseason is a positive for you, right? Because the primary reason for that, players now have extra competition to worry about, because there is one less starting spot on every single CDL team. So there is 12 less starting positions. For a franchise, it's the same, right? From a franchise perspective, you don't have more competition to worry about. You don't have 4, 5, 6 franchise expansion teams that you have to worry about that could possibly sign your talent, or that could sign X player or Y player. You don't have to worry about that. So that instantly kind of associates this principle for CDL franchises, that they no longer have to worry about, or not they don't no longer have to worry about it, but the competition aspect remains the same. If anything, it actually helps them, because again, for the kind of bottom side of franchises, for franchises who are kind of more toward the bottom tier, this is great for you. And the reason for that is because you now have more availability for players. Think about it. And I know this has been kind of circling on social media. I love Patty P. Aches, right? He is changing his entire Twitter over to everything French to kind of get a hold of the Paris Legion. It's never been more clear that Aches is interested in wanting to be on the Paris Legion. It didn't happen last season, and there's a reason for that, because players, much like Aches, are realizing, hey, I need to be on a franchise team. Now, as of right now, there are no rumors in terms of where Aches is going, so I'm going to assume that that is the case, that he hasn't found a home as of yet, but there is a reason for why he is contacting them, and the reason for that is because of the value. Franchise value, from a player's perspective, increases coming into year 2 because, again, less spots for players, same for franchises. So again, if you are a franchise coming into year 2, no extra competition, more availability for players, and a bigger opportunity of growing your brand. Because again, we talk on the talent that exists in the CDL. Undoubted, right? There are an unbelievable amount of talented challenger players that we already saw a lot of them get the call up, and a lot of them played well, right? We talked Draza, Hollow, Vivid, Mac, Awakening. All of those guys, for a majority, if not all of them, saw success, right? They saw success. They made their team better, which goes to show the talent pool that was already in the CDL mixed in with the talent that is in the challenger side. It's overwhelming. So if you are a franchise, you're in a wonderful position because you got to see that younger players, the challengers division, has so much talent there, along with the already existing talent that was in the CDL last season. It's an overwhelming amount of players that you had to choose from. And the one kind of major positive that I'm looking at from a player's perspective that a lot of people maybe aren't under the impression of is not only do you have the ability to sign players for this season, you can maybe lock them in for 2 years. Because if you're looking at this from a franchise perspective, you can kind of manipulate the system a little bit, right? You can kind of look at a player and say, hey, listen, do you want to play in challengers next year? Or do you want to have a guaranteed contract for my team, for my franchise, and get the opportunity to play for 2 seasons? You can have guaranteed money. So if, again, you are a franchise and you manage to lock up, just a phenomenal player, you're thinking, hey, we got a steal on this guy. You can go to that player and say, listen, next season could be undecided. We want to guarantee the fact that you could be with us for 2 seasons. So now you're getting opportunities. You're getting, like I said, you're not having competition or any extra competition. You're getting more opportunity for players. You're getting more opportunity to grow your brand because you could get more well-known players, and you have the ability to possibly sign them for 2 years or 3 seasons. I don't think that we'll see 3-year contracts, but you never know. And that is what I think is so important about this. And again, for franchises, timing is on their side because from a player's perspective, you want to sign soon. You want to be on a team's radar. You want to make sure that you are finding a home. And again, this doesn't work the same way for every franchise because the top tier franchise, the top tier teams that saw a lot of success last year, they're probably fighting back and forth to try to get players to sign. But on the low end, right, you have a lot more opportunity. And for teams like Paris Legion, for teams like the Gorillas, for team, you can kind of list up a few different rosters, they can wait, right? Timing is on their side. They have the ability to work with that. And that's why I believe that we're going to see a dramatic difference in player salary amongst different rosters. I think from the top end, you're going to see those maybe either stay the same, if not start to rise a little bit. And I think toward the low end, toward the bottom end, we're going to see a lot of players signing for minimums. I think we will. I think we're going to see a lot of players going to be around that $50K minimum, which was what was talked about last year. I'm not sure if that's changed, but if it is, I think we're going to see a lot of players sign for the minimum. A decent amount of starters possibly kind of play for that amount, if not just around that amount as well. So I think player value drastically changes up. And again, if you are a franchise, you're happy with that because you have a number of different positive aspects coming at the next season. And I think, again, it's something that needs to be highlighted. Now, the one final thing that I will say about this subject in terms of positives is the potential negative that could exist for a franchise coming into year 2. Because again, you are having to think about the competition aspect because every team is looking more than ever like a super team. All of them are kind of going to be at a very high level. So if you're talking about placements, it's going to happen, right? It's going to be more difficult than ever to win a tournament coming into next year because we go from 5v5 now to 4v4. We talk about the amount of talent that exists and the fact that you're going to be competing against some unbelievable super rosters that have already been starting to form that we've seen over the past few weeks. And the one other thing that franchises are going to have to be concerned about is that they have to be careful on how they manage their reputation in year 2, because I've seen a lot of rumors talking on how X franchise or Y franchise is going to be trying to sign players for the very, very bare minimum. And that does concern me a little bit because, again, year 2 is important. There is rumors that coming into year 3, that is when we're going to have expansion. Negative publicity coming out of year 2 is not what you want from a franchise perspective because this is where you kind of bulk up, if you will. This is your opportunity to learn from things that happened in year 1, bulk up for year 2, maybe lock down talent, make sure that you are a solid destination. And obviously, if things can work out, if you can manage to get the salaries for a good price, then you're looking good. But it is important to make sure that from a media standpoint, from really just an in general result standpoint, that you hold a solid reputation coming into season number 3 or into year number 3. Because again, this is a primary opportunity for brands to expand. I think this is a huge opportunity for franchises to really boom after year 2 because of the amount of talent that is going to exist and the amount of players that have the ability to be signed. I think it is going to be great for franchises, and I hope that they do take and seize this opportunity because again, it's an important conversation to have. We talk on players a lot, but it is time to start talking about these franchises because of the massive boost that they have coming in from season 1 and now coming in to season 2.